Hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. Today we will study Unit 12 of MED-002, Civil Societies and Community Initiatives. Grassroots workers, such as farmers, villagers, and volunteers, who create powerful and practical ways to promote sustainable development in their own local areas. These local heroes include farmers who work to keep their soil healthy, people living by rivers who manage water for their communities, and city volunteers who create and care for green spaces. They use their hands-on experience every day to develop simple, effective solutions. Over the past decades, these community-led actions have grown into an organized network of groups working together to protect the environment. The role of civil society in environmental protection has grown significantly. Nowadays, NGOs work at every level. Some are small neighborhood groups. Others are national advocacy organizations. A few bring together groups across regions, and many connect communities around the world. NGOs operate at local, national, regional, and international levels for eco-friendly development. Each level makes local voices stronger, making sure environmental rules match real-life experiences rather than abstract theories. These groups work where policies meet real action. They plan projects, track progress, and carry out programs that support and complement government action. By highlighting context-specific insights, they help plan major initiatives that respect cultural traditions, economic constraints, and ecological sensitivities. This co-creative approach, combining formal rules with grassroots wisdom, leads to sustainable development that is stronger, more flexible, and benefits everyone. In this lecture, we will discuss the roles of small village groups and large international NGOs, and explore how civil society transforms environmental protection into a collaborative and dynamic process. Let's move to the next slide to discuss the key objectives of today's lecture and understand the focus and flow of our session. Our first objective is to outline community-driven environmental initiatives. These examples demonstrate how people take initiative to identify challenges and finding solutions without waiting for external direction. These movements show that the small local efforts can lead to large-scale change. The second objective highlights the importance of people's participation in environmental protection. When people are involved in every step, from planning to doing, and then reviewing, they feel responsible for the project, and that helps the project succeed for a long time. When everyone takes part, the project becomes a shared effort. This builds trust, makes people more responsible, and leads to better outcomes. Our third objective is to analyze the role of NGOs at various levels in environmental protection. We'll explore how NGOs working locally, nationally, regionally, and internationally help strengthen sustainable development efforts. GO provides technical expertise, gather resources, and advocate for policy reform. They bridge the gaps between communities and governments. Their ability to translate local knowledge into practical advice makes them essential partners in environmental governance. With these objectives in mind, this lecture will explore major global events, regional examples, and national movements to reveal the multifaceted impact of civil society on environmental decision-making. Now, let's move on to the next slide to explore three key moments in global civil society engagement. The first of these was the 1992 Rio Earth Summit. For the first time, world leaders officially acknowledged that achieving sustainable development requires active public participation. Agenda 21's Chapter 23, often called the People's Chapter, laid out clear principles for involving local communities, NGOs, and other stakeholders in policy design and implementation. This landmark decision changed the way things worked. Civil society was now recognized as a partner in creating environmental policy, not just a silent observer. Another key moment to consider is the 1998 WTO Ministerial Conference held in Geneva. At the 1998 Geneva WTO Ministerial, numerous activists and NGOs gathered to protest free trade and globalization, arguing that these agreements prioritized corporate interests over environmental and social well-being. Their demonstrations highlighted the dangers of unregulated globalization, showing its potential to cause deforestation, pollution, and the loss of livelihoods. Although the official talks focused on tariff reductions and market access, protesters' presence forced negotiators to consider the social and environmental impacts of trade policies. In subsequent meetings, side forums and public dialogues became standard, ensuring that community voices remained at the center of discussions. Finally, the Battle of Seattle, in 1999, showed the power of decentralized, networked activism on the global stage. Demonstrators shut down the WTO talks for several days, bringing global media attention to issues like labor rights, environmental protection, and holding corporations accountable. NGOs sent legal observers, volunteers managed first aid and communication, and grassroots groups used early internet tools to coordinate their efforts. The result was a powerful reminder that civil society was no longer willing to accept the decisions made behind closed doors. In the aftermath, transparency measures, stakeholder consultations, and impact assessments became key parts of many trade and environmental negotiations. Now that we've looked at global events, let's move on to next slide to focus on regional stories that show how local leaders and communities have helped shape environmental policy in powerful ways. Let's begin with the example of a grassroots movement against resource exploitation, starting with the story of Chico Mendes from Brazil, which shows how local leadership can help change environmental policy. In the 1980s, Chico Mendes, a rubber tapper in the Amazon, organized his community to fight against deforestation caused by cattle ranching. When speculators tried to clear the forest, Mendes and other rubber tappers formed cooperatives and used peaceful tactics like blockades, petitions, and media appeals to demand their legal rights. His efforts led to the creation of protected areas, where local communities could sustainably harvest resources like rubber, nuts, and medicinal plants while protecting the forest. Chico Mendes was tragically assassinated in 1988, which caused worldwide outrage and made him a symbol of environmental justice. His efforts led to new Brazilian laws that recognized extractive reserves, protecting millions of hectares of forest under community care. These reserves became examples of how to balance conservation with local livelihoods, showing that local knowledge can play an important role in managing resources. Similarly, in Nigeria, Ken Saro-Wiwa led the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people in the early 1990s to protect his community and environment. He recorded oil spills, gas flaring, and damage to the land caused by big international companies in the Niger Delta. Through books, films, and peaceful protests, Saro-Wiwa showed how pollution was harming the health and lives of the Ogoni people. Even though he was executed in 1995, his work pushed oil companies to clean up pollution and follow stricter safety rules. As a result, global guidelines for corporate environmental responsibility became more widely accepted and helped shape important policies like the Equator Principles and the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. These regional movements show how the role of NGOs has grown in negotiation, monitoring, and implementation of environmental policy. Today, governments officially include NGOs as observers or advisors in treaty talks, recognizing their on-the-ground experience and their role to represent affected communities. This formal NGO participation is now included in many UN environmental treaties, helping improve policy outcomes, ensuring that international agreements stay connected to on-the-ground realities. Now, let's move to the next slide and look at some country-specific efforts in India, where civil society has a strong tradition of environmental activism. The Chipko movement in the early 1970s in Uttarakhand became famous for its peaceful tree-hugging protests to stop deforestation. To stop commercial logging that put forests and local livelihoods at risk, villagers, especially women, hugged trees to protect them from being cut down. Inspired by Gandhian methods, they held peaceful sit-ins, public meetings, and marches to show their unity. Their continued efforts led the Indian government to place a 15-year ban on tree cutting in the sensitive Himalayan regions. Beyond preventing destructive logging, the Chipko movement also encouraged communities to create forest protection groups. Villagers monitored tree health, regulated grazing, and collected non-timber forest products like fruits, herbs, and leaves without cutting trees. This community-based model showed that protecting nature and supporting livelihoods can work together when local people share responsibility for resource management. Another movement inspired by Chipko was the Appiko movement in Karnataka, which started in 1983. Schoolchildren and youth groups hugged trees in the Western Ghats to protest against eucalyptus plantations that were harming local biodiversity. Activists organized ecological surveys, seed collection drives, and training camps on nursery management. They worked with local authorities to create agroforestry programs that combined native plants with economically valuable crops. These efforts convinced the state government to cancel permits for large eucalyptus plantations in protected forests and enforce stricter forestry regulations. Let's now explore how people responded to the construction of large dams. In the late 1970s, the Tawa Matsya Sangh in Madhya Pradesh brought together displaced fishermen to fight for their fishing rights in the new reservoir. By securing co-management agreements, local communities gained economic benefits, while also protecting the environment. These negotiated rights became a model for how communities and governments can share the management of natural resources, proving those inclusive decisions lead to sustainable outcomes. On the other hand, big hydroelectric projects like the TERI Dam in Uttarakhand, the Silent Valley project in Kerala, and the Koyal Karo scheme in Jharkhand led to large-scale protests. In Silent Valley, activists stopped a planned dam to save a rainforest that was very important for the environment. In Koyal Karo, protests led to project changes, better compensation for affected people, and stronger environmental assessment. Not all campaigns achieved full success, but they helped change laws related to displacement, rehabilitation, and protecting biodiversity. Another key example is the Narmada Bachao Andolan, which began in the 1980s to oppose the Sardar Sarovar Dam on the Narmada River. Led by local villagers and supported by national NGOs, the movement brought attention to the human cost of displacement and the loss of cultural heritage. Through ongoing legal battles in India's Supreme Court and pressure on the World Bank, the movement led to the cancellation of bank funding and the creation of important resettlement guidelines. Although the dam was eventually built, the Andolan helped secure better environmental protections and stronger rights for affected people, shaping infrastructure policies across India. After these movements, many environmental NGOs emerged across India, such as the Centre for Science and Environment or CSE, which published important research on industrial pollution, and the Energy and Resources Institute, or TERI, became a leader in clean energy research and climate change studies. Additionally, the Consumer Unity and Trust Society, or CUTS, worked to promote trade policies that support sustainability, while WWF India and Greenpeace India adapted global conservation frameworks to fit local needs and challenges. Grassroots groups like Tarun Bharat Sangh worked on watershed management and rainwater harvesting, combining technical knowledge with community involvement. Together, these organizations create a strong network that supports grassroots training, influences policy, and takes legal action, making sure that local experiences shape national strategies and national support reaches the grassroots. On the next slide, we'll tie everything together and highlight how state policies, civil society efforts, and grassroots action intersect in shaping environmental governance. In summary, government-led environmental policies give us important rules and structures, but they often miss the local knowledge and real-life experience that communities can provide. Grassroots efforts help fill this gap by identifying local problems and trying out creative and practical solutions. NGOs play two important roles. First, they act as watchdogs by checking whether rules are followed and reporting problems. And second, they serve as helpful partners by sharing expert knowledge, bringing people together, and co-designing implementation strategies. Widespread public participation makes environmental policies fairer and more lasting. It turns protection into a shared responsibility, not just a set of rules. This combined approach of combining government policy with local knowledge builds stronger and fairer paths to sustainable development. Thank you for joining this session. We've explored how grassroots initiatives and NGOs play a vital role in shaping sustainable development. As we move forward, it's important to understand the knowledge systems that communities rely on every day. In our next session, we'll study Unit 13, Community Knowledge, where we'll explore how traditional knowledge and modern science can work together to support sustainable development across areas like agriculture, health, and biodiversity. See you in the next session.